The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no secret is revealed. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
As for the Muslim Brotherhood is a London creation, forged as the standard-bearer of an ancient anti-religious pagan heresy that has plagued Islam since the establishment of the Islamic community, Ummah, by the Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century. Representing organized Islamic fundamentalism, the organization called the Muslim Brotherhood was officially founded in Egypt in 1929 by the British agent Hassan al-Banna, a Sufi mystic. Today, the Muslim Brotherhood is the umbrella under which a host of fundamentalist Sufi, Sunni, and radical Shiite brotherhoods and societies flourish.
Is the CIA an army of individuals who have a license to kill? It's like Murder Incorporated, right?
Oh, are you kidding? The CIA makes the mafia look like a Sunday school class. I mean, this is the problem with what's actually happened in Afghanistan. Look, the CIA has done in this country, what they've done to us is unbelievable. Look at the terrorist acts that have occurred. The CIA behind most, if not all of them. We had the Marine barracks. We had our embassy in Kenya. We had Pan Am 103. We had the USS Cole. We had Oklahoma City. We had the World Trade Center in 1993. Our government was involved in some of those. I can't say all of them because I don't know, but I do have documentation. And the informant, the FBI informant in the trial, a fellow named Salam, a 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer.
Muslim.
Right. He was the informant for the FBI. And he recorded his conversations secretly with this. So when it came time for trial, he said, hey, wait a minute, here's what really happened. Now, he told the FBI in advance that they were going to bomb it. He was assigned, given the assignment to put the bomb together. And he went to his supervisor, his FBI supervisor, and said, we're going to put a dummy bomb in here, right? And the FBI supervisor said, no, we're going to put a real bomb.
Oh, wait a minute.
Let me explain to the audience what's happened here. Okay, back in the 80s, 1980s, the Department of Justice proposed legislation to fight terrorism. And this legislation took away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties. One of the authors, a female attorney with the Department of Justice, publicly made this statement, I've got her name on my file someplace, that before this passes, people will have to be killed. Well, so that was the reason, I feel, for the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Unfortunately for them, fortunately for us, the good guys, there were only 6 people killed, not enough to pass the legislation. So what happened is that 3 years later, no, it was 93, 2 years later, April 19, 1995, down comes Oklahoma City Murrah building, 168 people killed. 1 year later, the anti-terrorism legislation that takes away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties is passed. And now with the Twin Towers, World Trade Center episode, our Congress is now proposing further restrictions on our constitutional rights and civil liberties. These explosions, these terrorist acts, were an excuse to pass anti-terrorism legislation.
And then to implement it.
And then to yes.
One explosion caused, because here's now what we are starting to learn about the succession, or what someone obviously hoped would be a succession of explosions. The first bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and diffused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first. So try to imagine two- or three-fold happening what we've already seen there. It is just incredible to think that there was that much heavy artillery that was somehow moved into the downtown Oklahoma City Federal Building.
2 other explosive devices were found that were not detonated, and they were larger than the first.
I think he said another bomb.
Playing it from a different angle as it slammed into the
in Operation Northwoods was to take a regularly scheduled commercial airliner and take a similar type plane, paint the tail numbers up to resemble that of the commercial airliner, fly it by remote control out over the Caribbean, and by remote control blow it up after sending a tape-recorded message saying, "Help, we're being attacked by Cuban MiGs." This was in 1962.
Wasn't no airline or anything. It was a twin-engine, big gray plane.
That was not American Airlines. That was not American Airlines.
Detonated.
Yeah. Take down a building.
All the way down.
It definitely did not look like a commercial plane. I didn't see any windows on the side.
Mark, if what you say is true, those could be cargo planes or something like that. You said you didn't see any windows in the side?
I didn't see any windows on the side. I saw the plane flying low. I was probably like a block away from the subway in Brooklyn, and that plane came down very low.
I mean, it was like a cruise missile with wings. Went right there and slammed right into the Pentagon. Huge explosion, a great ball of fire.
The plane does not fit in that hole.
On fire, some small fires in the woods, just small brush fires. The ground smoking, debris everywhere, pieces of metal, paper, insulation, wiring, and I just looked around and no people, and I'm thinking, where are the people?
article out of USA Today, and this report came out on April 19th, 2004. NORAD had drills eerily like September 11th, Pentagon Trade Center among imagined targets.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at another example of where, despite the conventional wisdom, there were people in the United States who actually were preparing to defend against the kind of attacks which occurred here on 9/11. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD for short, has been defending the skies over the U.S. and Canada for almost 50 years, 46 to be precise. USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons. And one target was the World Trade Center. Here's ABC's Brian Ross.
President Bush has said again and again that no one could have imagined what Osama bin Laden ordered for September 11th.
We knew he hated us. But there was nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government, that could envision flying airplanes into buildings on such a massive scale.
But that turns out not to be true. U.S. military planners did envision and practice those very scenarios. As reported by USA Today, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, conducted exercises with fighter jets, simulating hijacked planes flown into the World Trade Center in the 2 years before the attacks.
There are a lot of good people throughout the bureaucracy that were worried, were thinking about it, were trying to think outside the box.
Pentagon planners also envisioned the attack on the Pentagon 5 months before it happened. According to this April 2001 Pentagon email, Air Force officials wanted a war game, having a terrorist group hijack a commercial airline and fly it into the Pentagon. The email was obtained by the nonprofit group Project for Government Oversight.
The people who gave it to us were clearly concerned for some period of time that this kind of event could happen. And they were pushing very strongly on trying to exercise this event.
The idea was to check response times to launch fighter jets. But according to the Pentagon email, the plan was ultimately rejected by senior Pentagon officials as too unrealistic.
It certainly does not reflect as well on the policymakers that may have been saying that there was no conceived way that anybody could be thinking of this.
Still to come are questions, big questions, about NORAD's response on the day of the attack. Why, despite all the exercises and the planning, Peter, jet fighters were not in place anywhere near New York or Washington.
It's quite an amazing story. Many thanks.
Jet fighters were not in place anywhere near New York or Washington.
It's quite an amazing story. Many thanks.
We knew he hated us. But there was nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government, that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
This is all very upsetting to me. I get very angry about this. The lies. I could analyze that little 3-minute newscast for days. Why there weren't fighters in place? I have stacks of mainstream news articles, the Pentagon's own reports. 20 minutes in a car from New York, there's one of the biggest U.S. military bases in the world that has responsibility for fighter intercept of hijacked jets, you name it. Hundreds of fighter aircraft. They were ordered to stand down because of a drill on the morning of 9/11 by the CIA. And we have those.
A newly released report has claimed that the 44th President of the United States is a CIA creation. American investigative journalist Wayne Madsen says Barack Obama, as well as his family, including his parents, stepfather, and grandmother, had connections with the CIA.
America, tonight, if you feel the same energy that I do, if you feel the same urgency that
An exceptional orator, promise for the disillusioned, and change from the status quo. These are all what helped Barack Obama to become president 2 years ago. But now the reality seems to be something far from that. In what is being called a bombshell, investigative journalist Wayne Madsen has revealed in a report that in 1983, President Obama worked for the Business International Corporation, which was a CIA front. The company used to conduct seminars with the world's most powerful leaders as agents abroad with CIA espionage activities. Madsen says this intelligence connection runs in Obama's family. Obama's maternal grandmother, Madeline Dunham, was one of the first female vice presidents of the Bank of Hawaii in Honolulu. The report says this bank was also a CIA front for funneling money to oppressive dictators and rulers such as former Indonesian President Suharto, who came into power through a CIA-backed coup. In the 1960s, Obama's father had been selected by the leader of Kenyan African National Union, Tom Mboya, to receive scholarship and be airlifted to the University of Hawaii. CIA files indicate that Mboya was an important agent of influence for the agency. The airlift was a CIA operation to train future agents of influence in Africa, which was a battleground between the U.S., the Soviet Union, and China for influence. As a Kenyan student in the University of Hawaii, Obama's father, who was already married and had a child with another on the way in Kenya, met Obama's mother, Ann Dunham, in a Russian class in Hawaii. This meeting eventually led to their marriage. Barack Obama's mother, Dunham, was divorced when his son was 4. She married Lolo Soetoro after meeting him at the East-West Center at the University of Hawaii, the center affiliated with CIA activities in the Asia-Pacific region. She worked for Tim Geithner's father, Peter, at the Ford Foundation, widely believed to be a CIA front. Now Mattson is questioning that if Barack Obama, as is suspected, was subjected to the CIA project, either by brainwashing or being part of it, then it'll become problematic for an American president. He says if Obama has been brainwashed, then he can be controlled, and if he was simply part of this project, then he can be bribed.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. In 5 days, you can turn the page on policies that have put greed and irresponsibility on Wall Street before the hard work and sacrifice of folks on Main Street. In 5 days, you can choose policies that invest in our middle class and create new jobs and grow this economy so that everyone has a chance to succeed. Folks who can't pay their medical bills or send their kids to college, or you not being able to afford college, or thinking about that $30 or $40 or $50,000.
You know, when I was asked earlier about the issue of coal, you know, under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, you know, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, you know, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids.
Hey guys, I heard people are opening up the Obama birth certificate PDF in Illustrator, and it is indeed a fraud because I just tried it, and I'll show you what I did. Hit open, click on the birth certificate, then right click in the middle, release clipping mask, click off of it, and oh my gosh, you can move things around now. Signatures and everything. And I'm a graphic artist, and that should not happen. It's a forgery, guys. They're trying to pull something on everybody, and it's not a very good forgery. So that's all.
I brought up the subject of what's going to happen after we take over the government. We become responsible then for administrating, 250 million people. And there was no answers. No one had given any thought to economics. How are you going to clothe and feed these people? The only thing that I could get was that they expected that the Cubans and the North Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Russians would all want to occupy different portions of the United States. They also believed that their immediate responsibility would be to protect against what they called the counter-revolution. And they felt that this counter-revolution could best be guarded against by creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest, where we would take all the people who needed to be re-educated into the new way of thinking and teach them how things were going to be. I ask, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill. 25 million people. I want you to imagine sitting in a room with 25 people, most of which have graduate degrees from Columbia and other well-known educational centers, and hear them figuring out the logistics for the elimination of 25 million people. And they were dead serious.
What do you think the most important thing is for Barack Obama? Obviously, you're here to talk about the anniversary for U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but if you had to say this is going to be the country or the conflict or the place that will define the Obama administration, what would it be?
The president-elect is coming into office at a moment when there are upheavals in many parts of the world simultaneously. You have India, Pakistan, you have the jihadist movement. So he can't really say there is one problem, that it's the most important one. But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
I understood that I was looking for someone who knew Chicago and would enjoy socializing. Mr. Multani said he knew someone who was a friend of his. On November 6, 1999, after picking me up at the hotel in Gurnee, and this is significant, Mr. Multani used his cell phone to make a call. That call was made to then Illinois State Senator Barack Obama to set up an introduction between myself and Senator Obama. Upon arriving at the bar and exiting the limo, Senator Obama was standing next to Mr. Multani, and I was introduced to Senator Obama by name. Later that evening in a bar which I believe was called Alibis, and I state believe because I have failed so far to get Citigroup to provide the credit card receipts that has the actual name. I mentioned I could use a line or two to wake up. Senator Obama asked me if I was referring to Coke, and I stated I was. After stating I was, Obama stated he could purchase cocaine for me and then made a telephone call. This too is significant, from a cell phone to a presently unknown individual, during which Senator Obama arranged the cocaine purchase. Senator Obama and I then departed the bar in my limousine and proceeded to an unknown location where Senator Obama exited the limousine with $250, which was provided to him by me. Returned a short while later with an 8-ball of cocaine, which he gave to me. I did ingest a couple of lines of cocaine, and shortly thereafter, Senator Obama produced a glass cylinder pipe and packet of crack cocaine from his pocket. Obama then smoked the crack cocaine. I performed fellatio on Senator Obama in the limousine during the time Senator Obama was smoking crack cocaine, after which I had the driver take me to my hotel, the Comfort Suites, Gurnee, Illinois. The following day, November 7th, 1999, Senator Obama appeared at my hotel room, unannounced, uninvited, where we again ingested cocaine and I again performed fellatio on Senator Obama.
In recent years, several politicians have been outed in scandals, including Senator Larry Craig, who tried to solicit sex from an undercover officer in 2007. Even more shocking, it was revealed in 2004 that right-wing blogger James Guckert, who had unprecedented access to the White House during the Iraq War, was actually Jeff Gannon, a madam and male prostitute for MilitaryStuds.com. During his 2 years writing for GOP USA and Talon News, Gannon officially made over 200 appearances at the White House. Oddly enough, over 24 of these visits would take place when there were no scheduled briefings. He failed to check in or out with the Secret Service on many other occasions, coming and going as he pleased. These type of activities are not new to the White House. In 1989, headlines involving callboys in the White House rocked the cover of the Washington Times.
The Washington Times reported today that unidentified White House aides in the Carter, Reagan, and Bush administrations now are being investigated for using the services of a callboy ring. The paper reports that 2 of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
Hundreds of credit card receipts obtained by the Washington Times confirm that its clients were key officials of the Reagan and Bush administrations, military officers, congressional aides, and U.S. and foreign businessmen with close social ties to Washington's political elite. This ring extended beyond the White House and into Congressman Barney Frank's bedroom.
Barney Frank, one of 2 openly homosexual members of Congress, acknowledged having used a male prostitute, whom he then hired as a personal employee. The man had keys to Frank's basement apartment on Capitol Hill. Frank paid him approximately $20,000 out of his own pocket to be his housekeeper and driver. But as first reported in today's Washington Times, the man was on probation for sex crimes and a drug conviction, and he ran a prostitution business out of Frank's home.
Although Frank tried to claim ignorance, Stephen Goby, the prostitute in question, claimed that Frank was completely aware of what was going on, and was even receiving free and discounted sexual services. The fix seemed to be in. Frank was threatening members of Congress to remain silent prior to being exposed in this sex ring.
Massachusetts Democrat Barney Frank, a homosexual, threatened to expose fellow congressmen he knew to be gay unless they stopped spreading rumors.
President Barack Obama. Here we have the images in Photoshop for a direct comparison to Obama. You can see that the mixture of Stanley Ann Dunham, Barack Obama's mother, with Barack Obama Sr. never looks at all like Barack Obama the son. However, the image made from combining the features of the mother and communist Frank Marshall Davis creates the face of Barack Obama almost exactly, just as nature did 50 years ago. Now there may still be doubt in your mind, and unfortunately there is nothing I can do about that except urge you to try this for yourself, and tell everyone your results before the election in November, because if the son of communist activist Frank Marshall Davis is President Barack Obama, who has lied about his entire history, who has given our space program, which we need to protect ourselves, to communist Russia.
Today was also the beginning of the end for the U.S. Space Shuttle program.
Some have said, for instance, that this plan gives up our leadership in space by failing to produce plans within NASA to reach low Earth orbit, instead of relying on companies in other countries.
This is my last election. Yeah, after my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah, I understand. I trust this foundation.
And you see folks waving tea bags around.
And is also the same man who has crushed our financial system in his first term. There is no telling what he will do in his second term. President Barack Obama is clearly the son of communist activist Frank Marshall Davis, and in my opinion and that of others, that makes President Barack Obama potentially dangerous as the continued President of the United States of America.
let us summon a new spirit of patriotism, of responsibility, where each of us resolves to pitch in and work harder and look after not only ourselves but each other.
I pledge. I pledge. I pledge.
For the environment, I pledge to flush only after a deuce, never a single.
I pledge.
To sell my obnoxious car and buy a hybrid.
I pledge to be of service to Barack Obama.
I pledge to be a servant to our president
and all mankind.
Because together we can, together we are, and together we will be the change that we seek.
The assault weapons bill passed in the face of ferocious opposition from the National Rifle Association. She says she got the best she could.
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it. I could not do that. The votes weren't here.
Here we just were joined by two people who were actually inside Theater 9 where the main shooting took place. I'm joined by Fasil Iayu and Evan Morrison. And gentlemen, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Can you just tell me what you saw and what you heard?
We were just watching the movie. It was about 15 minutes into it, and as we were doing that, someone completely dressed in black started walking from the bottom emergency exit on the right. And we saw something getting thrown from the back of the theater, and then from his side, something looked like a canister, and it went off. The popping noises and tear gas, and then he started shooting.
So you said you saw something come from the back of the theater as well, and then the front as well?
Yeah, they both were thrown. They popped one after the other, and after they did, he started shooting.
Okay.
Well, a couple of the descriptions about who he is have really stood out. One neighbor who said they didn't want to identify themselves said he was, quote, off. Another neighbor who didn't want to go on camera described him as socially awkward, quiet, and would sometimes just sit and stare. On the other hand, there is a teenage neighbor who has known him his entire life. He says he's happy with someone who is nice, and he thinks that James Holmes was set up.
I'm pissed. That's it. I'm at. You know, I don't feel like he did it. You know, I felt like it was a scam or something, but, you know, it's just overwhelming.
Have you learned from him about what transpired inside, or from your mother?
So the most I can learn, or the most I know as of now, is that there are multiple shooters. There's multiple people. It was a very well coordinated thing. Is that there are multiple shooters. There's multiple people. It was a very well coordinated thing. It wasn't haphazard.
They did walk a guy out of the woods. I saw him walk a guy out earlier with handcuffs. He walked by us and said he didn't do it. It was a grown man. A grown man, yeah. He's sitting in the front of the police car over there now. So, I mean... He didn't have a gun? No, I didn't see any gun. Just had him handcuffed. And he walked by us and looked into parents' eyes and said, I didn't do it. How was he dressed? Camo pants with a dark jacket.
The media claims that 6-year-old Emily Parker on the right was shot in the Sandy Hook massacre. Here she is shown with her parents along with her 3- and 4-year-old sisters. But the story that she was killed at Sandy Hook is not possible, because here she is sitting on the president's lap after the shooting. What may have happened is that when the photographer said to bring out the Parker girls, they brought out Emily by mistake. The rest of the Parker family changed their clothes after the family picture, but since Emily was not supposed to be in the picture with the president, she remained in the same dress. From left to right is Emily, her father, the president, her mother, her sister, and the family law attorney that claims to be her aunt. Here, the fake father makes his national TV debut.
To come to the microphone so we'll listen in. Okay.
My name's Robbie Parker.
My family is one of the families that lost a child yesterday in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings here in Connecticut.
Just go slow! Take your time!
Walking around with what looks like detonators in their hands, and all this is going on, and there's like patsies whose bags match the wreckage of what the news put on air and said was the remains of the black canvas bags. So we went on air with this, and 5 minutes after, it's during break, and I watch Wolf Blitzer panicking, going, oh, I guess they're going to arrest somebody later, and they've got all this evidence, and it's footage from inside a shopping center. And I'm like, well, wait, that's the footage we've got. And so they were responding right then because they already knew about this. These were public videos and photos for almost 2.5 days, and it was hiding in plain view because all over it are men wearing Navy SEAL caps with the Punisher logo that all the SEAL teams wear, identical to what Chris Kyle wore. And you see Chris Kyle in his photos wearing the tan combat boots, the tan pants, the black shirt. Same deal over and over again. And we have the photos and the videos of all of this. And we have the eyewitnesses who've confirmed that indeed they were told, it's a drill, don't worry about guys in backpacks everywhere.
There was people on the roof with binoculars looking down onto the athletes' village at the start. There was dogs with their handlers going around sniffing for explosives, and we were told on a loud announcement that we shouldn't be concerned, this was just a drill.
So there were all these black backpacks so that police who weren't compartmentalized couldn't stop what was happening. And the real evidence of this being a false flag is that they've covered up that, and they lied about it in the press conference, the drill that's now been confirmed, that was in the Boston Globe, that was covered in News 15. And since then, Natural News and others have talked to the marathon coach that witnessed all this, announcing, everybody be calm, don't worry about the guys with the backpacks. You see the photos, the men that look like SEALs, they look like military, bottom line, are standing around in control of the situation with their backpacks on their cell phones, right in the area across the street where the bomb goes off, where they have the patsy. And I said, if this is the real patsy, because his straps of his backpack match the FBI photos of what was left of the backpack, they won't be able to release this now because we have all the John Doe number 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s already digitally online. It isn't like Oklahoma City where the feds could declare, hey, we're going to say national security on all these 17 surveillance cameras and confiscate the VHS. This is out there. And so then they announce, we have arrested the suspect. We're going to release it. And then they said, well, now we're not, and there's not going to be a press conference, and there wasn't an arrest. Ladies and gentlemen, we have absolutely blown their program wide open because they can't show the patsies who are right there where the flags were, right there where the bomb went off, on all these different video cameras, showing different angles of it and photos. They can't show that when they're surrounded by guys in kind of the off-duty Navy SEAL uniform that the general public doesn't notice, but that is black shirts, black jackets, and khakis and tan combat boots. This is incredible, ladies and gentlemen. This is off the charts, and the media is like, well, we've never heard of this before. They didn't arrest the guy, and they've evacuated the courthouse he was supposedly in and for whatever cover-up, and now there won't be a press conference. And Who knows what's going to happen with Obama tomorrow now? The whole script is screwed up because people basically looked at what was happening. So, if a tree fell in the forest and no one was there to hear it, did it make a sound? We're here watching this, the drills, our reporters at the press conference. They're acting incredibly suspicious as soon as he brings up false flag and drills at the press conference.
Was there any prior knowledge, Joe? Because according to BostonGlobe.com, they said they were doing drills this morning for the same exact thing that happened, according to BostonGlobe.com. Now, was you guys given any warning ahead of time of this taking place?
As I said earlier, there was no specific intelligence. We certainly increase our posture around a big event like this. All of those things happened in preparation for this event, but there was no specific intelligence that anything was going to happen.
Do you take any questions?
Oh, sir, why were loudspeakers telling people in the audience to be calm moments before the bomb went off? Is this another false flag stage attack to take our civil liberties and put more Homeland Security sticking their hands down on the pants on the streets?
No. Next question.
That's it. Why was people being told prior?
9:30 tomorrow morning.
Why was people being told prior to the bombs going off to stay calm? That's a false flag, gentlemen. Just to put more TSA on the street.
Apparently we're not the ones harboring a fugitive. Yeah, this is our garage right now. What the hell?
Well, President Obama taking on not only health care reform, but another controversial issue, immigration reform. And a key meeting at the White House tomorrow could be the first step toward that reform and for some very big changes for every American worker. Senators Chuck Schumer and Lindsey Graham, bipartisan that is, set to sit down with President Obama tomorrow, discussing plans for a national identification card. Now, this thing is meant to crack down on illegal workers, But our next guest says it could crack down on you and your privacy. Congressman Ron Paul is a Texas Republican. He's opposed to this card. Congressman, afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Nice to be with you.
It's a great pleasure to have you. All right, so what's the problem with the national ID card? Because its proponents say this is it. This is the thing that's going to finally help us stop illegal immigrants from coming in here and taking jobs.
Well, we do have a problem with illegal immigration, but I would say the problems of every American citizen carrying their papers for wherever they go is a much worse problem than illegal immigration. Besides, you can take care of illegal immigration otherwise. But people over this decades now in this country, there have been some who have wanted this national ID card, and they're looking for every opportunity to do it. And this is it. I mean, who knows what will come of it. My guess is they'll probably have a GPS chip in there so that they can measure everybody, every instant, no matter where they go. So to me, it violates the whole principles of privacy, the principles of the Constitution, the principles of the Republic, and to me it's a gross distortion of what we should be doing. It's part of an authoritarian society, and dictatorships have this, but not a republic. We're
okay,
not
but tell me how. Tell me how
card.
it's invasive, because what Schumer and Graham are proposing, according to what I read, is your ID card would have either your fingerprint, your thumbprint on there, or it would have a reading of the veins in the back of your hand, and you'd have to be scanned by your prospective employer, and that way, if it came up that you weren't legal, they would catch you by the scan. How does that? I mean, it's not really GPS with the government following you. How does the scan of your fingerprint bother you?
Well, someday it may do this, but why should you have to do this? And they said, well, the equipment to scan your hand or your card is going to cost about $800. And they say, well, what about somebody who might only have 1 or 2 employees and they don't want to buy the equipment? Or you can go to a government office to do this. Can you imagine if the post office takes this up and you stand in line to take your potential employee over and try to get them scanned? I mean, the whole notion of us carrying our papers in everything that we do, every job we get, it will be a national identifying card. One thing that Graham, I think, argued, well, we already have Social Security cards.
Right.
Well, I have a Social Security card that says not to be used for identification purposes.
And the theme of the night was protecting civil liberties.
If you're sitting in a cafe and somebody thinks you emailed your cousin in the Middle East, and they think you're conspiring with them, you get it. You should be charged. You should be, imprisoned if they can make the charges stick. But they shouldn't just drop a Hellfire missile on your cafe experience.
A Milky Way bar gave Senator Paul a little energy boost during the dinner hour. He says he made many trips to the so-called candy desk on the Senate floor. He also got a special delivery of an apple and some tea from Senator Mark Kirk, who is still recovering from a stroke. Phil.
Anything to keep rolling, and roll he did. Now, his target was the White House. Has the president of the White House responded to this filibuster yet, Peter?
No, but Senator Paul says he would be very surprised if he didn't hear from the White House today. One interesting response we've heard already, though, is from another Republican, Senator Lindsey Graham, who thinks Senator Paul is on the wrong track.
The drone program he has utilized overseas, I think, has made us safer. This idea that we're going to use a drone to attack an American citizen in a cafe in America is ridiculous, and I think the American people need to understand the threat we face.
Support for the action.
Now, America has unique capabilities, and we will bring them to bear to help our European and Canadian allies and Arab partners stop further violence against civilians, including through the effective implementation of a no-fly zone.
More than 110 Tomahawk missiles launched from mostly U.S. ships and submarines pounded Libyan surface-to-air missile sites, aiming at more than 20 targets around Tripoli. They come out of the blue.
I have 2 words for you. Predator drones. You will never see it coming.
Those are being operated by somebody at a command center in Langley, Virginia. They're watching it on video, on a video screen. They're pressing the button. They're deciding who lives and who dies. And then they go off for a weekend where they have barbecues in their suburban Virginia and suburban Maryland homes. And Who pays the price? The people who are the victims of the attack. Is there accountability? None whatsoever.
Drones have become the symbol of America's undeclared wars. Wars that seem to have no state or legal boundaries.
We've opened up a new realm of warfare, a new realm of breaching international and domestic law.
Used in Pakistan, Yemen, and elsewhere, they have killed scores of civilians. The former chief counterinsurgency strategist for the U.S. State Department has estimated that drone attacks kill 50 non-targeted persons for each intended target.
One of the things the United States kind of pretends is that we are morally superior. We are better able to judge what is good for other people. And therefore we are entitled to inflict our judgment on them, and that we presume they will be grateful to us for it. But that is not what happens, ever. And it's not what's happening in Yemen. It's not what's happening in Pakistan. They are furiously enraged with us.
It gives me a lot of information regarding what's going on there because it provides real-time video feed, and I don't have to put an officer right in front of the place, so it's quite an advantage having it.
Info 22. Hold on, 70,
a really skilled sniper or somebody who's trained a lot can almost match that. But introduce a bit of stress, a bit of heat, a bit of cold, a bit of fatigue. They're downhill, and this thing is just it's unbeatable.
right, and I've noticed these troops myself several times when I have people, even though we all had a top security clearance, no matter who I ask, they all told me don't worry about it. And then I later find out they're here to implement the UN's insurgency against the uprising of the American people when things get bad. And obviously, the things that are getting bad are being made that way because they're already here waiting. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Wait a second. You know, sometimes there's some things that you can say and you just might say them too fast. So you said that they are here to implement the UN's suppression of the American people uprising against the government?
Like, basically what they're here to do is if I say anybody, put it this way, if the government has you on a list, these foreign troops are going to take you to one of 800 concentration camps, which I've tracked down myself. And I've seen personally two of them here, one by one base and one by another base. I'm going to say weird, but also I've talked to a worker who was on one of them, and I personally asked him, what did he think about what was going on? He knows exactly what I know about it.
Right. Wow.
But he doesn't know about the foreign troops, though. The foreign troops are here to take, because Americans are going to take Americans to concentration camps.
So while this compromise didn't contain everything I wanted or everything that these families wanted, it did represent progress. It represented moderation and common sense. That's why 90% of the American people supported it. But instead of supporting this compromise, the gun lobby and its allies willfully lied about the bill. They claimed that it would create some sort of big brother gun registry, even though the bill did the opposite. This legislation, in fact, outlawed any registry. Plain and simple, right there in the text. But that didn't matter. And unfortunately, this pattern of spreading untruths about this legislation served a purpose, because those lies upset an intense minority of gun owners, and that in turn intimidated a lot of senators. I've heard folks say that having the families of victims lobby for this legislation was somehow misplaced. A prop, somebody called them. Emotional blackmail, some outlets said. Are they serious? Do we really think that thousands of families whose lives have been shattered by gun violence don't have a right to weigh in on this issue? Do we think their emotions, their loss, is not relevant to this debate? So all in all, this was a pretty shameful day for Washington. But this effort is not over. I want to make it clear to the American people, we can still bring about meaningful changes that reduce gun violence, so long as the American people don't give up on it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Welcome back to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. Now it's time for the buried lead. That's a story we do not think is getting enough play. When you think of secret societies, you think of groups of rich old men, like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, sitting around a ridiculously long table, all trying to top each other with their best diabolical laugh. It makes for a fun cartoon, but in reality, such societies and secretive meetings do exist, and one is going on right now behind closed doors in England. The Bilderberg Group is a meeting of the most influential people in Europe and North America. Wall Street investors, business moguls, politicians, royalty, they're all coming together and keeping the media and everyone else out. What are they discussing? What are they plotting? Doesn't the public have a right to know? Well, apparently no. Though, what they chat about could very well end up impacting your 401k or who knows what else. Security was tight today at the Grove Hotel in this leafy area north of London. 140 members of the global elite arrived here for a top-secret, hush-hush, off-the-record conference in the English countryside. How's this for a guest list? The head of the International Monetary Fund, former Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner, the heads of Amazon.com, Google, and BP Oil, former General and CIA Director David Petraeus, and what's a top-secret cabal of puppet masters without Henry Kissinger? All of them came here today for the Bilderberg Conference. That's Bilderberg, not Build-A-Bear. Participants are tight-lipped about discussions, other than to say topics will range from the economy to jobs to U.S. foreign policy, what the organizers call megatrends and the major issues facing the world. Reporters and outsiders are not allowed in, and everything is off the record. Organizers say that so participants can take time to listen, reflect, and gather insights. Protesters from around the globe have descended upon the venue, objecting to the secret nature of the meetings, which have been going on behind closed doors among European and North American elites since 1954. Protester Daniel Kirby explains.
It's just a gathering of people who are concerned that our elected politicians who promise transparency are meeting in secret with the heads of top banks, pharmaceutical companies, weapons companies, you name it, European royalty are in there, sort of thing. It's just incredible that they can say one thing and do the other.
Now, if you're thinking this is just another cabal of the people who secretly run the world, so does noted author, provocateur, and conspiracy theorist Alex Jones from InfoWars.
Magna Carta has been restricted for the scum globalists that are in there.
Jones is broadcasting live from the conference this week.
They want you dead, Governor.
Why? They're out to kill me. Some pretty nutty conspiracy theories about the group abound. They're hiding the cure for cancer, for example. But just because Bigfoot believers who are often offensively wrong are on the case here does not mean there isn't reason for the rest of us to be wary, as these masters of the universe confab away from cameras. The conference wraps up on Sunday, and organizers say there will be no resolutions or votes and no policy statements.
I think it would be very naive to think that all of these people are going to turn up to a meeting unless it has some effect.
Gerard Batten is a member of the European Parliament for London.
I'm sure that they are actually reaching decisions about which way public policy should be going in the countries that are represented, and of course in the European Union.
We'll have to wait and see if any of the attendees choose to speak about what happened at the conference. Let me also say it appears my invitation was lost in the mail, an oversight that we here at The Lead hope will be corrected next year. Of course, you can share your conspiracy theories about the event with me on Twitter, @JakeTapper, all one word.
Developments today tied to the government's secret gathering of the phone and internet data of millions of Americans.
And now we know the man behind the leaks, a 29-year-old low-level employee for a U.S. defense contractor, but one with a lot of access, it would seem. This morning, after coming forward, he is now holed up in a Hong Kong hotel. We want to get right to NBC's Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell with the latest. Andrea, good morning to you. Good morning, Savannah. An administration that has been sharply criticized for its aggressive policy towards leakers has now been shaken to its core by the man who revealed himself as the source of some of the nation's most closely held secrets to The Guardian and The Washington Post.
Looking at the present plague of scandals that have the Obama administration and its dinosaur media allies backpedaling and averting like never before, we can also see that Benghazi Gate scandal gained full steam with the testimony of whistleblowers, while at the same time the Justice Department's wiretapping of the American press and the IRS targeting American-loving organizations came to light to diffuse the energy of the media into as many directions as possible. Benghazi is the big one. The death of Ambassador Stevens and 3 others is just a small part of the overall situation. Now it's been recognized that in Benghazi, our own interests were recollecting arms originally given to the Libyan rebels that had toppled Gaddafi, only to redirect to Syrian rebels through Turkey. Of course, many of the Syrian rebels are not Syrians. They are mercenaries bought and paid for by Western intelligence agencies in collusion with the Saudis. Oddly, the public at large does not bother to see the very public reports that these hired fighters are flying under the banner of Al-Qaeda, originally birthed under the Ark of Crisis strategy initiated by Zbigniew Brzezinski in Afghanistan under President Carter. The false flag attack on 9/11 gave the Bush administration the political power to invade Afghanistan and Iraq as a broad spectrum of never-ending war on terror. Now criminal elements of the U.S. government are blatantly aiding Al-Qaeda to topple the Assad regime in Syria. Benghazi Gate represents the greatest threat to the elitist plans to further destabilize the Middle East and escalate tensions to the point of global economic collapse. War. Meanwhile, at home, the police state is quietly exploding in preparation for the full economic meltdown and the resulting civil unrest that will follow. Barack Obama, aka Barry Soetoro, aka Frank Marshall Davis Jr., has blundered one policy fight after another in his attempts to do the bidding of the big money banksters and corporations that back him. In all likelihood, in order to cut their losses and maintain legitimacy in their propaganda machine, they will throw him under the bus. In the midst of the scandals, it is the genuine concern of this creator of this film that the greatest amount of damage on the civility and freedom of the United States people would be through an insider-led assassination on President Barack Obama. Under this situation, any political momentum that liberty-minded citizens and the politicians they have recently set into power would be vanquished. What would be partially a race-driven civil war would be a perfect situation for the planned downfall of the Republic. The patsy setup for the killing of the president would likely be a sort of Tea Party right-wing extremist of ex-military background. The backlash from Obama's assassination will coincide perfectly with the stock market crash and hyperinflation caused by the Federal Reserve's reckless quantitative easing program. Food and gas will be unaffordable. Riots will ensue. Particularly in major cities, theft and violence will rule until people will be begging for a police state. Between the conflicts domestic and foreign, UN security forces backed by Chinese, Russian, and possibly German military apparatuses already in our country will occupy the United States, while their united efforts in the Middle East will bring down Israel. Biological and chemical warfare, along with possible nuclear options, will scatter the last remaining vestiges of freedom on Earth. From that point, the New World Order will be in full power. One army, one bank, one global fascist empire. It's important that we go in depth in understanding the menace, and even more important, that we spread that understanding to everyone we know. The essential facet of this understanding is the requirement for individual human liberty. Scream it from the rooftops. Liberty is the answer. The government and any of its functioning bodies must protect above all else the innate rights of the individual human being, not a race of people, a body of faith, or political persuasion. This basic tenet is guided by the golden rule: do unto others which you would have done unto you. This means that as an individual, not a collective, that you have a right to do whatever you feel, so as long as you don't harm, injure, or persecute any other individual, with the full understanding that you have full jurisdiction over your life, liberty, property, and general happiness. We have in our society forgotten the golden rule and the essence of natural rights and replaced it with moral subjectivism and collective social justice. It is imperative in this great moment in history to remember history and re-sow the seeds of American liberty. It's time to reawaken the heart of freedom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What do those words mean to you? To me, they say, thank you, America, for your strength, for your courage, and for our freedom, which has been a beacon to the world for 200 years.
Of the United States of America,
Whose bright stars are 50 states, each bearing its own stamp of individuality. People, 200 million strong. People who have come to her from all corners of the earth.
and to the republic for which it stands,
A land of laws with an ingenious system of checks and balances that allows no man to become a tyrant and lets no group prevail if their power is not tempered with a real concern for the government. A land where the right of dissent and free speech is jealously guarded, where the ballot box is the sword and the people its wielder.
one nation, under God,
A land where freedom of worship is a cornerstone of her being. A land graced with temples and churches, synagogues and altars that rise in profusion to embrace all the religions of the world.
indivisible,
A land forged by the hot steel of raw courage and formed forever by the awful crucible of civil war.
with liberty,
Where man in pursuit of an honest life will not be denied his chance. Where her citizens move freely within her vast borders without hindrance or fear. A land brimming with opportunity, where freedom of choice is the guideline for all.
and justice,
The courts of our land are open to all. Its wheels of justice grind for all causes, all people. They look to every avenue for justice, every concern of the law, and they temper their reasoning with mercy for all.